Thank you, Becky. You know, I don't know how surprising this must have been for the disciples, but I imagine it was a little shocking. I mean, when before had they ever seen someone who was their leader, the Messiah, the one who had come to do great things and invite them to a new world, a new kingdom? And now, surprisingly, as they come together, he begins washing their feet. I think it's kind of hard for us to kind of imagine how shocking that must have been to their system of thinking. Have you ever had anything like that just kind of drew you up short? Like, wow, that's not what I ever thought life was about, or what this was about. Sometimes it happens, just in our close relationships, I think sometimes where, we come into a relationship, or maybe we develop a relationship with a friend or a lover, or sometimes with a child as we're having children, and suddenly they kind of surprise us with something that we didn't think that was what was supposed to happen. We get surprised like this all the time, and it kind of catches us. And I can imagine that the disciples, like Peter in the story that Becky just read, were probably in this place of thinking, okay, we're going to get together, we're going to do kind of what we always do, we're going to be together, and he's going to say some really meaningful stuff, and we're going to go, yeah. And pretty soon, I would imagine as Jesus is kind of wandering around with a towel and taking off his robe, they're like, oh, this is going to be different. And then, can you imagine, here you are as a disciple, and here he comes, and he begins to wash your feet. What do you feel? What do you feel? Humbled? Most of the times that I've ever, and Methodists are kind of known as those foot washing Methodists, because I guess nobody else decided they were, interested in doing all that kind of stuff. Though I'm sure other denominations do it too, but I have heard the term foot washing Methodists, as if there was something about us that we just like feet or something. And I've been to a fair number of foot washing services, and one of the things that I kind of have a little sense about, and they've often been very meaningful, often they're done on Maundy Thursday before Easter, but what my impression of them has always been is it's always a very solemn and somber experience. And as always, as I read the scripture, I'm always kind of taken with wondering, if we knew what actually happened, if we could have a video instead of a kind of script, or at least if in the script they would often put in something about what people were feeling at the time, it could change everything. Like, for instance, I kind of imagine maybe this thing with Jesus washing the disciples' feet wasn't quite so serious. Like, I'm not saying they were doing the hokey pokey, but your left foot in, but I am suggesting that maybe when Peter's talking to Jesus about, no, you're not going to wash my feet, maybe there was a little humor going on. And that when Jesus responds to him, maybe he was saying that with a little sense of the kind of humor that you and I share with each other when we're doing something kind of playful and yet meaningful. We somehow, and I think in our heads, have this idea that if things are meaningful, they're very solemn. And if they're playful, they're not. And yet, it seems to me that if there's anything to be playful, celebrative, joyful about, it is the amazing gift of human connection and the care that we share with each other and the support we give to each other and how we soothe each other's hurts and humiliations, isn't it? If you ask me what is it that is the most beautiful thing about life, about this gift of life, that would be in the top two. Because without it, I can't imagine what life would be like. The unique thing about this story is that it also suggests that even those who are at the top, the most powerful, those who are the rulers, are just like everybody else when they're coming to this feast. Everybody is the same. The beauty of this whole idea of Jesus washing the disciples' feet is that we are all people in need of that, and all called to share it with each other. There's a story, maybe you've heard it, called The Fisher King. Many a mytho-poetic writer or psychotherapeutic writer or self-help guru has referred to the story of the Fisher King at some point because there's something of human truth in it. It goes something like this. This is my abbreviated version. There's the young prince. He is suddenly given a vision in the fire of the Holy Grail, the beautiful, that most cherished thing. And as he sees it, he wants to possess it, and he reaches into the fire to take the Grail, which disappears and leaves him burned and wounded. The wound of the Fisher King is one that never seems to heal. As he grows older, it just seems to get a little worse. It seems to continue, and he sends people throughout the kingdom to try to find the Grail, the only thing that could probably heal this wound. And now as the king, he is given all this power, all of this capacity, but he can't enjoy it. He can't really find the joy in it. The wound continues to rob him of the joy. One day, as he is sitting on his throne and people are coming and going with their concerns and other gifts, he says to someone, "I'm thirsty." And a little boy goes over and picks up a cup that seems to be discarded over near some of the gifts, fills it with water, and brings it to the king. And the king drinks of the water and is healed. And he sees that it's the Grail. And the king says to the little boy, he says, "How did you find the Grail? How did you find the one thing that I most needed?" And the little boy says to the king, "I don't know. I just knew you were thirsty." Somehow inside of all of us, isn't there both that Fisher King, numbed some ways by that which we have reached for, grabbed at, for power and possession? And isn't there also that little boy inside of us, or little girl, who knows when people are hungry, who knows how to care, knows how to give? You know what? I don't know about heaven. A lot of people talk about heaven. I don't make prognostications about afterlife just because I've never met anybody from there yet. And that's not saying it. Maybe I did, I just didn't know it. But I don't make prognostications about that. But one of my favorite images of heaven is, if you want to think about heaven and hell, is that they're the same. They're both all people sitting together at a great feast of wondrous, wondrous bounty. The only problem in hell is that everybody's arms are stuck like this, just as they are in people in heaven. And everybody's like starving. But in heaven, everybody's feeding each other. That's a great image, isn't it? If I want to reimagine what my ideas of what the kingdom, as Jesus talked about it, or what just human life really is about. Maybe. The story of the Fisher King reminds me that just as Jesus invited people together to celebrate love and service and demonstrated that, it didn't matter what you had. It didn't matter what you had in your bank account. It didn't matter how good you are at whatever you do. What's going to make your life whole? What's going to fill that place that always feels empty? That little place, that forever empty place. Isn't it that sense of caring and giving and loving? And what a gift it is to live in that. What a transformative gift it is to live out of that place in yourself. Like maybe a spring of living water